Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. First of all, first things first, to anyone who commented on my video about my Colin Firth t-shirt, I bring you one better. Hugh Grant. Yes, I have two t-shirts with two British gentlemen on them and I'm not ashamed. So basically in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys super specific book recommendations based on your requests. I made a little post on my community page asking what you guys are interested in reading, like if there is anything you want to see in books, if there is anything you want a specific recommendation for, and you guys delivered. So thank you so much to anyone who requested a book recommendation. Definitely makes this video a lot easier. You guys are the reason this video exists. And again, I'm really sorry if I didn't get to your request. I have only read a limited amount of books in my lifetime, and there were some requests where I just literally could not think of a single book recommendation, and of course there were some double ups. So basically I'm just gonna go through all the ones that I have, all the ones I could think of, and recommend you guys some books. I have actually done this video before and that one ended up being really long, so go grab a drink or a snack and settle in because we are going to be recommending some amazing books today. So the first request is from Chloe, and she asks for a book where it's basically about a woman in her 20s struggling with life. And I've read so many books like this and I'm so excited for these recommendations. First of all, we have one of my more recent reads, Queenie by Candace Carty Williams. This book is incredible. I read it in my Pink Books video and I absolutely fell in love. But basically this is a story about our main character called Queenie, and she's recently gone through a breakup. From then on, we just follow her journey in the aftermath of this breakup and how she's really dealing with all the obstacles that come her way. I really love all of the breakup chat and the realities of what a breakup is like for, you know, you or your friends as well. Like, I really liked seeing how it can impact not just the person who's been dumped, but everyone around them as well. And then there were also some much deeper topics and themes in here that we discussed, such as the Black Lives Matter movement and fetishization of black women by white men. And there were so many mental health chats, which I really loved. This book was so readable. I saw so much of myself in Queenie and so much of my friends in Queenie. I saw so much of myself in Queenie's friends. It was just really relatable, and I think just a really great book for anyone who's in their 20s or even older than that or younger than that. I just thought it was a really beautiful story. I rated it 5 stars. So yeah, obviously I highly recommend this book for this specific request. I'm also going to go ahead and recommend a bit of a weirder one, but it is The Pisces by Melissa Broder. This is one of my favorite books ever, and everyone always shits on it. Like, it has such a low rating on Goodreads, but it is honestly one of my underrated favorites. It's definitely not for everyone, so I can understand if people don't love it as much, but I really liked it. Basically, we follow our main character who again is going through a breakup and also really struggling with her dissertation. She goes to stay and dog sit for her sister in LA, and while she's there she like goes on a lot of walks on the beach and she finds this like merman and has all these deep chats with him, and it kind of turns into like merman erotica. I know it sounds really bizarre, but there were so many good discussions in here beyond that kind of like weirder side of the plot. Our main character is going through so much. Being able to discuss like the expectations of women in society was just so great, and how like women are expected to behave and be okay all the time. It was just so hilarious and so tongue-in-cheek, and of course really strange, but strange in the best way possible. I really love this book. The main character is really unlikable, so you know, go in with a grain of salt. Like, she's not going to be saying things that you're like, oh yeah, she's a great person. But I don't necessarily think books need to be about perfect people, and this is very much one of those stories. I really love it. I really recommend it. And the final book I'm going to recommend for this request is a non-fiction book, but I feel like it is the book for women who are struggling in their 20s, and it is Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. Dolly Alderton's debut novel and her memoir. Basically, we follow Dolly learning about love throughout her life. Like, we start in her childhood and we go into her early 20s, and it's just so beautiful, like knowing that there's a real person out there that is experiencing all the things that we're experiencing. Dolly Alderton has such a way with words. Her writing is so funny. When she's just sharing anecdotes about stuff that she got up to when she was a university student, somehow it's so interesting. Like, she's just so good at writing. It's really excellent. And I think what I love about it most is that at the end of the day, it's not really about like the men in her life. It's about how she learned about love through her friendships with other women. and it's just so beautiful. It's like all of her friends are struggling, she's struggling, and there are so many different topics in here that I just felt so seen by. Dolly Alderton is one of my favorite people in the world after reading this book. So I really do recommend it. It's genuinely so good. I'm not really much of a non-fiction reader, but this one, it was just so readable. Like, it was so good, and it literally made me want to read and pick up more memoirs. It's so beautiful, and I really recommend it. Next, we have a request from Cailyn, and she has a few requests in this one request, so I will try and go through all of them. But basically, she really loves dystopians, time traveling, and lakeside books of any genre. Firstly, for the dystopian read, I have a really weird one that I don't think I've talked about on my YouTube channel, but it is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This is a book I actually studied in English in high school, and I feel like everyone's always like, oh no, as soon as I have to study a book in class, I don't like it anymore. I'm like the opposite. Like, this isn't usually the sort of book that I would pick up, but because I studied it, I just have so much like love for it, even if like I probably wouldn't like it if I didn't read it outside of class. I mean, I don't know, I read it a long time ago, but I remember really enjoying it. I don't know, I just really love doing those deep dives into literature that kind of school is the only kind of place that like forces you to do so. But The Road by Cormac McCarthy, I would call it more post-apocalyptic, but I kind of consider post-apocalyptic and dystopian like the same thing. I don't think any dystopia needs an apocalypse, but I feel like every apocalypse needs a dystopia. But post-apocalyptic, and we follow our main character and his son as they're trying to navigate through this post-apocalyptic world and the people they meet along the way, and just them trying to survive. Like, it's very much a survival story, but the way it was written, I don't know, it just really spoke to me. It was just a really good fast-paced read. I did read it a long time ago, but I still just remember it so clearly, and I really remember liking it. So for a dystopian, I really recommend this one. It's definitely not your classic like dystopian that you see on booktube. Like, it's not, you know, The Hunger Games or Divergent or anything like that, but it's still really good and says a lot about human beings in general, and I really liked it. For time traveling, oh my goodness, I wish I read more time traveling novels, because I really love time travel in like media. I genuinely love time travel so much, and I need to read more of them. But the only one I could really think of was Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I really loved this novel. It was so beautiful. This basically is about a cafe in Tokyo, and it's a very special cafe because there is a seat and table in the cafe where if you sit on it, you can travel back in time. And basically we follow 4 kind of stories. People say it's a short story collection. I don't even know if it actually is. Like, I don't know what it's actually classed as, but I didn't see it as a short story collection. Like, all the stories of the 4 people that have traveled back in time for whatever reason, they're all kind of connected. But yeah, basically we just follow 4 people who use this time traveling cafe for whatever purposes that they need it for, and it was so beautiful, so heartbreaking, really, really tender, and really well written. Like, really makes you feel for all these individual people who feel the need to travel back in time, and I really loved it. It's definitely not like super action packed, but really beautiful conversations and dialogue and stories about love and loss. So I highly, highly recommend this novel. And then for the lakeside books, I have 2 recommendations. They're not really my favorites. Like, I didn't love these novels, but I think other people would. Like, it's just because I didn't love them, it doesn't mean that you wouldn't. So first of all, I had to recommend Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. It's like the go-to, I think, when you think of a lakeside novel. It got really popular last year, but basically it is a second chance romance, and it's set by the lake in Canada. And we follow basically 2 different timelines of our main character, who spends every summer as a child with like this other family at this like lakeside holiday home. And then we follow the present day, where it's her kind of meeting up with this boy from her past again. So it's very much a romance. I didn't love the plot and the characters in this novel, but I think what the author did excellently was the setting. The author is just really great at describing those like summery lakeside vibes. So if that's what you're looking for, I really recommend this one. And just because I didn't love the plot and characters doesn't mean that other people wouldn't. So I do recommend that if you're looking for those lakeside vibes. And then the other one is a YA horror called Dark and Shallow Lies by, I think it's Jenny Myers Sane. I don't remember the author's name. I read this on Kindle, but this is a YA horror, and this setting I would maybe call more of a swamp than a lake. I'm pretty sure it's described as a lake in the novel, but it's very swampy. It's a swampy lake, but it's set in like the psychic capital of the world, and a girl's best friend goes missing. So she's trying to investigate like what happened. We hear about things that happened in the past in this pretty like magical small town. Then a mysterious stranger comes along, and I believe there's kind of like a little romance as well. I definitely recommend this one if you like horror, if you like that sort of spooky like psychic atmosphere. But yeah, definitely kind of lakeside vibes. The next request is from Kitty Quinn, and she's basically asking for a no spice book of any genre that is still super swoon worthy and gives you butterflies. I said this in my most recent reading vlog actually. I'm not very good at remembering whether or not things have spice, just because it's something that I don't really take notice of a lot of the time because I don't care for it. But I'm pretty sure I have some good recommendations, both romance and non-romance. So first of all, romance-wise, I remembered The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. Christina Lauren's books, I feel like they sometimes will write kind of spice-heavy books, and sometimes it will be relatively closed door. And I remember this one actually being quite closed door. Like, it was implied, obviously, that things were happening. It wasn't like smutty, I don't think. I really loved this book. It was genuinely so good. But basically we follow our main character, Olive, whose sister is getting married to her enemy's brother. Something happens which results in them having to use the honeymoon that the bride and groom couldn't go on, and so they have to pretend to be newlyweds. So it's like fake dating enemies to lovers, and it's so fun. I genuinely really loved it. Super swoon worthy. Christina Lauren are really hit or miss for me, but when they hit, and this one really did hit. So I really like this romance. It was probably one of the first romances I ever read and was like, I love it. So yeah, highly recommend this one. And then non-romance genre. This is gonna seem really random. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. The romance in here, obviously this is a YA thriller, so it's not super heavy on the romance, but there is a little romance as a side plot, and it's so beautiful and so sweet and so tender, and I really love it. It's genuinely one of my favorite parts about these books. Like, yes, I love the thriller and the mystery element, but the romance as well as a side plot is so sweet, and I genuinely love the characters together so much. I feel like people don't really think of the romance when they think of these books, but I do sometimes. I do, and I'm like, oh, that's right. Pip and Ravi, I love them so much. I feel like everyone knows what these books are about by now, but yeah, it's mystery thriller. Really love this book and this whole series. I still need to read the final book in the trilogy, which I'm reading this week, so hopefully I'll see how the relationship develops even more so in there. Next we have another YA book, but it's a contemporary, and it is Felix Ever After by Cailyn. I really loved this novel. This book has a love triangle in it, and kind of like the big romance, absolutely swoon worthy, absolutely butterflies. It's just so beautiful. We follow a black trans boy character who is basically just going through a lot. He's getting blackmailed by someone who has uncovered like their dead name and their previous identity before they came out as trans. But throughout all of this trauma, and also through all the discussions about sexuality and identity and gender, there is a beautiful love story going underneath it all. I rated this book 5 out of 5 stars. I really loved it, and absolutely butterflies. The ending, I happy cried. Actually, I remember I fully happy cried at the end of this. So if that doesn't scream like swoon worthy and butterflies, I don't know what does. And another novel that is totally different to all the ones that I have recommended previous, A Man Called Ove by Frederick Buckman. Again, not a book where you would think it has a swoon worthy romance, but the romance in here that is kind of like a little side plot, like a backstory plot, I would say. Oh my god, groundbreaking. I loved it so much. Like, that was the main thing I think I loved about this novel. I will say though, definitely be cautious when going to this novel, because at the end of the day, the plot is about an old man who is trying to kill himself, but the community keeps stopping him. So obviously massive trigger warnings for depression and suicide. Still so good, and the romance that we hear from about Ove and his wife, so beautiful. Really love it. So definitely swoon worthy. Jessica asks for a book that all takes place in one location. Love novels like that. Love books and movies that just have one setting. I have thought of a few. First of all, I have The Beach by Alex Garland. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I reread it a couple of years ago and was like, does it still hold up? And I think for the most part, yes, it does. But basically, this is a novel about a man who goes backpacking in Thailand, I believe. And while he's there, he meets this French couple and they find this secluded beach with a whole community of people that have kind of cut themselves off from society. It's a really, really amazing book. It's so good. The story is just incredible. The characters are incredible. I mean, I think there are a few scenes outside of the beach, especially at the beginning, but for the most part, it's all set at the secluded beach, and we watch our main character kind of lose his marbles a little bit, but also learning about like how human beings will always try and create some sort of hierarchy amongst themselves, even when they're cut off from society. It was so good. I really, really loved this, and definitely a good like all one setting book. Another one that I can think of is The Girls I've Been by Tess Sharp. It's a YA thriller, and we follow our main character who is a professional con artist despite being a teenage girl, and her mother have gone through life like conning all these people. But now she is at the bank with her ex-boyfriend and her current girlfriend when all of a sudden a bank robbery goes wrong and they are held hostage. So we do see parts of her backstory and learn about her life in different chapters, but for the most part it's all set at this bank where this heist is happening. I remember really loving this novel. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I could not put it down. So this is another one that is really good that I don't see a lot of people recommend, to be honest. I'm also going to recommend Misery by Stephen King, probably the only Stephen King novel that I actually enjoyed, but probably because it's more like thriller than horror. But basically this one is about a very popular author who gets in a car crash, and then he is also taken hostage by this like super fan who found him on the side of the road and like apparently has taken him back to her house to like nurse him back to health. But in order for her to do so, he needs to rewrite the ending of one of his books that has recently released. Very chilling, very scary, a little bit gory, but I still really loved this book. I don't know why, I was on the edge of my seat reading this, so I know it's very popular, but I really recommend this one. And finally, I know I have a book that I always recommend, but it's because it's just so good. And that is No Exit by Taylor Adams. This is all set at a truck stop during a massive blizzard, and it's very scary. Our main character sees these 4 people at this truck stop, and then when she goes out to try and get cell phone reception, she sees that there is a little girl locked up in a cage in the back of someone's van. So now she's stuck with 4 strangers, one of who is potentially a kidnapper. And basically it's her trying to figure out how she's going to navigate this and get out of here alive while also saving this child. I read this in one day. It was so good. Really, really loved it. Really bingeable thriller. Great. Next we have a request from Rita, who asks for a book where the love interest comes off as really cold and distant but is actually super sweet. I swear to God I could do a whole video on this particular trope, but I have chosen a select few. I've actually chosen a lot, but we'll get through them quickly. What immediately came to mind was Next of Kin by Hannah Bottom Young, a romance that I read earlier this year. This is basically about our main character who wants to get guardianship of her younger sister, but she isn't accepted because she doesn't have the finances to do so. So she joins this program where she can team up with another potential foster guardian who doesn't have something else that she has, and they live together and like raise these 2 people who need fostering together. And it's so good. She teams up with this guy called Warren, who is trying to get guardianship of his younger brother, who is a teenager and he is deaf. And Warren is like super cold and distant at first, but once you realize why he is and why it's just because he's super overprotective of his family and he doesn't want to let strangers in, he is actually the biggest sweetheart. I love this book so much because our 2 main characters are both just really good human beings. They're just really, really good people, and that's what I really loved about it, you know? Like, it's just reading 2 great people doing something really, really admirable, falling in love. Like, give me more. Loved this one so much. Can't wait to read Hannah Bottom Young's next book. I also thought of a book that I haven't talked about on my channel in a hot minute. my biggest guilty pleasure, my most problematic fave, Pub 57 by Penelope Douglas. Genuinely love this so much. It's definitely on the smuttier side for my people that don't love spice as much. Avoid this, definitely avoid this. But I really like this. The main characters are super unlikable, but I love them so much. Like, they're so realistic and I really feel for them. But basically it's about our two main characters who were pen pals when they were kids and really kind of like fell in love with each other when they were growing up. But then our male main character, Misha, ends up seeing the love of his life, his childhood friend, Ryan, at a party, and he doesn't like what he sees. He sees a bully. He sees someone that treats people like shit. So he enrolls at her school, not telling her who he is, and they're like fully enemies. Like, they are so venomous to each other. This is my guilty pleasure though, because once you get to know them and once you see past their flaws, you're like, both of them have points. The fact that I haven't spoken about this on my channel recently is kind of disgusting, because I will always root for this book. Anyone who talks shit about it and is like, why do you like this? You don't understand. You don't understand my brain if you hate this book. I loved it. I loved it. It's definitely cheesy, definitely trashy, but one of the best roller coasters of my life. For this recommendation, I also thought of Darling Venom by Parker S. Huntington. It's on the longer side. I think it's like 700 pages. But basically, we follow our main character who fell in love with this boy in high school, and then he committed suicide. And she's basically just never really gotten over it. But then she meets his brother when they're both adults, and all she's heard about his brother is just nasty things. But then these two characters really bond over their grief and their trauma, and they start to fall in love. And it is a massive slow burn. Like, it definitely takes time, but once you get to know our main character who has lost his brother, he's actually such a sweetheart. I think this book is really good for this recommendation. I think the characters are really excellent. I'm also going to suggest Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. This one is so good. I think this is my favorite of the whole trilogy, the Brown Sisters trilogy. But basically it's enemies to lovers. Eve Brown is kind of like a mess. Like, she doesn't have a job, she doesn't really have any prospects, she doesn't know what she wants to do with her life, and then she accidentally crashes her car into Jacob, who is a very uptight bed and breakfast owner. And so Eve says that in order to apologize, she'll come work at the bed and breakfast, and then they kind of fall in love. This book is fantastic for the autism representation. It's genuinely so good, and that's what I love about Jacob, is like, he comes across as really cold and distant, but he is actually such a fucking sweetheart, and the journey these two go on together is so beautiful. I love this novel so much. Genuinely recommend it. It's so good for this specific request. Next we have another request that is books with great female friendships, but specifically without a man who tears them apart. Fair enough. Love that. I have a few suggestions for this one. Of course, my faves, Delilah Green Doesn't Care and Astrid Parker Doesn't Fall by Ashley Herring Blake. I love this series so much. The third book in the series is coming out very soon, but this is part of the Bright Falls series, and basically it's about a whole group of friends that are lesbians or bisexual, but the friendship between all the girls in here is one of my favorite things about it. And it's perfect because there's no man to tear them apart, because most of them aren't even interested. Love these books so much. I've talked about how much I love these books on my channel so many times, but I highly recommend this series purely for the female friendship in these books. Like, that's honestly the best part. Not even the romance, just the group of female friends is so beautiful. I'm also so sorry guys, I see the lighting going crazy in my video. Like, I need you to know I'm gonna have a bitch of a time editing this video. Winter and natural lighting, it's not working for me. I might have to bring out the ring light next time I film a video during winter. Another random book, this one, the female friendship isn't like super prominent to the plot, but I loved every time our two gal characters interacted. And it's Something Wilder by Christina Lauren, the second Christina Lauren book that I'm recommending in this video. Crazy. Follow our main character Lily, and she is the daughter of a famous treasure hunter. Essentially, she ends up going on this massive treasure hunt with her like ex-boyfriend when they were children. But another thing that I really loved about this book is the relationship between Lily and her co-worker, who is another woman. Their friendship was great. Like, I loved this side character so much. I think I even loved her more than like the main characters and more than the romance. Like, this was a 3-star book for me because of the romance. Like, I didn't love it as much. There were things I didn't love about this book, but best believe the best thing about it was the female friendship in here. I loved it so much. I love romance books that have really solid female friendships and not just like a zany side character. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's actually a good, well fleshed out side character. I loved their friendship. It was so good. Loved this book. It felt like Indiana Jones, but female led, and I love that. And kind of another adventure book, The Female Friendship, we have Finley Donovan is Killing It by Al Cosimano. The entire Finley Donovan series I've kind of given up on, but the first book is genuinely so good. Like, I love the first book so much, and what I love so much about it is Finley and her sidekick Vero. Like, their relationship and their friendship in here is one of the best female friendships I have seen in any book ever. Like, I'm not even exaggerating, like, it is so good. But basically, this is a mystery novel about a single mother who accidentally gets mistaken for a hitwoman, and a whole series of unfortunate events happen, and she ends up with a dead body on her hands, and her babysitter Vero kind of catches her and then is like, I'll help you. And it's just great. It's honestly just great. I really, really liked this novel, and the female friendship in it specifically is so good. The next request is from Parveen, and they ask for a book that makes you question everything and makes you think, like, what the hell did I just read? Perfect. The most recent one that I read that is like that, Earthlings by Sayaka Murata. I absolutely loved this. 5 out of 5 stars. Like, literally perfect, but so bizarre, so disturbing. Like, go into this book with caution, genuinely, because there are massive trigger warnings for sexual assault, pedophilia, abuse of family members, also body horror. Like, there is some body horror in here, but it's written in a way that feels really disconnected from reality. So I wasn't like squeamish or anything reading this, but it's messed up. But I fucking loved it. Basically, this one, we follow our main character who believes she is an alien. She believes that she is not supposed to be on this earth. So her and her cousin, who is also her boyfriend, try to like find this alien ship so they can go back to their like homeland. However, the reason that she thinks this though is because of all this messed up stuff that like humans have done to her. It's really fucked up. Like, it's so fucked up, but written so beautifully. Like, somehow it's written so poetically while discussing these really awful themes. I really, really highly recommend this book. I think it's so well written. Yeah, I think a lot of people should read it. Also, to add to the fucked up book recommendations, All's Well by Mona Awad, another book that I read really recently. This one, by the end of it, I was like, what the fuck? Like, literally what happened? There is such an air of supernatural about this book, but like, I can't differentiate like what's real and what's just a fantasy. It's so good though. We follow our main character who deals with chronic pain, and she is a drama professor. She wants to put on the play All's Well That Ends Well, but her students kind of riot and want to put on Macbeth instead. But then these 3 benefactors come along who are very mysterious, and all this crazy shit happens from there. I don't want to say anything about it because I don't want to spoil it, but like, I didn't know what was fact and what was fiction the entire time reading it in the best way possible, and the ending definitely really fucked me up. I was like, I don't know what happened. I feel that way about most of Mona Awad's books, to be honest, but it was genuinely such a good read. Next, we have a request from Mia, which is basically just for a fast-paced book that they can read in one sitting. First of all, I'm gonna say anything by Frida McFadden. Frida McFadden's thrillers are excellent. I recently read The Inmate on Kindle Unlimited. All of her books are on Kindle Unlimited, and this book was insane. It was basically about our main character who, when she was a teenager, her high school boyfriend tried to murder her, but then she moved back to her small town with her child, her 10-year-old son, and gets a job working as the nurse practitioner in the prison where her ex-boyfriend is. And all these secrets from the past end up being uncovered. I think I read this within the space of a day as well. Just super fast paced, so bingeable. Also, the Housemaid series by Frida McFadden, The Housemaid and The Housemaid's Secret. Again, both of these I read so fast. They're excellent. These ones follow our main character, Millie, who is an ex-convict who ends up getting a job as a housemaid for a really wealthy family. The premise is kind of the same for both of these, but both of them have really great characters, really great villains, really great plot twists. Really recommend these books. Again, so fast paced. And also another book that I read in one sitting is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. If you want something that's not so much a thriller, which I find are usually the fastest books to read, this one is a YA fantasy, and I read this entirely one sitting, did not want to put it down. The pacing for this novel is absolutely excellent. Like, it's not drawn out too much. The plot moves are really fast, and it's just another really bingeable book. We follow our main character, Evangeline, who is upset that the love of her life is marrying someone else, so she makes makes a deal with one of the fates, basically to stop the marriage, but in return she has to do something for this tricky little fate. It is a beautiful story. I loved the characters so much, and it honestly reads like a fairy tale. So yeah, if I can read this in one sitting, and I'm not even really a fantasy reader, you definitely can. Next we have a few requests from Issa. I'm just gonna do a few of them because there's a lot on here and I could only really think of things for a few of these requests. But the first one is a book where a library plays an important part. Immediately I thought of this YA horror novel called The Devil Makes 3. This one is all set in a library basically, but it's very witchy, very satanic, and honestly love that. It's kind of got a romance in it as well, but basically it's entirely set in a library. We follow our two main characters who accidentally release a demon from this scary grimoire that they find in the basement. Obviously it's super witchy. There is a lot that goes on in here, and basically the whole thing is set at a library, so obviously that plays a very important part, and the imagery behind it all is excellent. I really loved this book. The romance was great, as well as like the scary vibes. They also asked for a book with bisexual or asexual representation. Immediately for the bisexual representation, I thought of Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert, which is a YA romance that I read recently. The relationship in here is a heterosexual relationship, but our male main character is bisexual, which I really loved to see. And the fact that it was also just so accepted by his peers. He was just very openly a bisexual man, which I really loved. This is a second chance enemies to lovers romance. It's YA, so it's obviously very sweet, and it's about basically two overachievers that really want this scholarship, so they end up having to do this like survival wilderness trip together, but they're both like infatuated with each other but also hate each other. Really good. I would also call it like Grumpy Sunshine, but like our male main character is the sunshine character, so I guess reverse Grumpy Sunshine is what people call it. I really love this book, so well written, and Talia Hibbert's writing is just always amazing. So yeah, really loved this one for the bisexual rep. Another bisexual representation book is Perfect on Paper by Sophie Gonzalez. I believe this is also Own Voices for the bisexual representation, which is also just fantastic. It's another YA romance, and it's about our main character who is kind of running this service where she gives relationship advice anonymously to people in her school, and then this boy catches her and is like, what are you doing? And they end up kind of, I guess, fake dating. Like, she's never been in a relationship, so he kind of like teaches her how to be in one so she can give like accurate advice. But there's also a love triangle happening because our main character is bisexual and in love with her best friend, but then also exploring this potential like fake dating relationship with this boy. So I really loved how we got to see our main character have feelings for two different genders, and the bisexual representation just made my heart so happy. It was so good. I really liked this book. I think it's a really sweet kind of YA rom-com. And for the asexual representation, I wanted to recommend Full Disclosure by Cameron Garrett. This is a queer novel again about our main character who is living with HIV, and the asexual representation in here isn't from our main character, but her best friend is asexual, and I really liked seeing that in this novel. So even though if it's not a big part of the book, I really liked, I don't know, just having people from all different kind of walks of the LGBT spectrum in this novel was really great to see it represented. I really love this book. I think it's really well done and really important, and I highly recommend this one as well. MJ requested for books that have mixed media elements. Obviously the Good Girls Guide to Murder series all has mixed media, but I immediately also thought of Night Film by Marisha Pessel. This book is basically following a journalist who is trying to uncover some mysteries surrounding this massive horror movie director who's kind of like a cult favorite in the horror community because his daughter recently committed suicide, and our journalist is just trying to uncover like, who is this man really? Like, is he a bit sketchy? Because he's heard some rumors that like he is a sketchy guy. And there is so much mixed media in this. Our main character explores the dark web a lot, so there's a lot of like kind of dark web stuff on here, like all this stuff. But then there's also like articles, pieces of newspaper, there's like interview transcriptions. There's so much mixed media in here. Like, even just when they're like referencing things that our main character has found, it will like put the cutout in the book. I really loved this book. I thought it was really inventive, really good, a really good thriller. And if you're a horror movie fan, I genuinely recommend this novel. It's fantastic. So yeah. this one definitely is something that stuck out when I thought of mixed media. Kai has asked for thrillers with highly intelligent and manipulative women, very similar to the main characters in Blood Sugar and A Kind with Killing, two of my favorite books ever. So this honestly is my favorite genre, and I could go on about these books for ages, but I've just narrowed it down to a select few. Immediately I thought of They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. Our main character is a professor who goes around like killing men once a year after they've done something really horrible, so like rapists or abusive partners or anything like that. She goes around and seeks revenge and gets away with it every time. We also follow another character throughout the book who is a college student who is kind of obsessed with her new best friend in a very lesbian way, and I love that. This book was so good, the characters were excellent, and the way that the two main characters linked up, beautiful, expertly done. Really recommend this book. It's very, very similar, I think, to Blood Sugar and Kind with Killing, so love this. Also, My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing is just excellent, another really great thriller. In this one we follow a married couple who, to spice up their marriage, like to kill people, but the twists and turns along the way, like the plot twists in this, are absolutely fucking amazing. Our main character, like the female main character, is so fucking clever. This is like, I would say, the new Gone Girl, if that makes sense, you know? It's excellent, really good. And finally, one of my newer favorites is How to Kill Men and Get Away with It by Katie Brent. I absolutely love this book. It's so funny, like it's genuinely so funny, but it is a thriller about a social media influencer who accidentally kills a man and then gets a thirst for it. So it is so good, like all the different plots in here, amazing, really fast paced. I read it so fast and I need more people to read this. Like, I'm not seeing anyone talk about it, and it needs to be talked about. It genuinely needs to be talked about. I love it. I honestly could recommend books for days and days, but this video is getting really long, so I'm just gonna do one more request, and it's a really simple, easy one. Eliza has asked for a book that made you hungry. Immediately I thought of Legends and Lattes, a very cozy, low stakes fantasy novel about a barbarian orc who sets up a coffee shop in this fantasy town where no one has had coffee before. This made me so desperate for a coffee, but also so hungry for a cinnamon roll. And I feel like that's all you need to know. It's really low stakes, really fun and cozy, and just excellent. I really loved all the descriptions of like baked goods. And there's one side character in here that has my entire heart. Let's just say he very much reminds me of Remy from Ratatouille. And that's all I'm gonna say. But I do really recommend this book if you want that cozy, like almost kind of Studio Ghibli vibe. Like, I imagine the food in here looking like Studio Ghibli, even though it's definitely more like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing. It reminded me of, like, I could see Studio Ghibli turning this into like a beautiful like fantasy film. So those are all my recommendations for this video. My back is hurting from sitting on the ground and sharing all these books, so I'm gonna go straight to do some editing. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you got some really exciting recommendations. I love doing these sorts of videos, so let me know if you want more recommendation videos. But yeah, guys, that is all from me. A reminder that all my socials are linked down below, so if you want to follow me on Bookstagram, if you want to follow my Twitch, or if you want to join my Patreon, all the information is down there. But yeah, guys, again, thank you so much for watching, and thank you again to everyone who sent in requests so this video could happen. I love you all so much, and I will see you very soon in the next video. Bye!